Hello everyone, welcome to this presentation. I am Mirijan Nassim. Today we will present uh, a topic that is building hybrid web apps using JAMstack, uh, which is a new approach to modern web. So first, by hybrid, we don't mean like using multiple technologies or something, but we mean that the content won't be just static files or dynamic files, but we can use both. Okay, so first things first, we need to understand how the legacy web worked. So back in the days, we needed to set up a web server that serves us HTML and CSS and JS. Uh, uh, for example, we have a web application here that uses WordPress and that fetches the pages from the web server using Apache. And this web server will fetch data from a database like MySQL to build the dynamic pages. Now, what is the problem with this approach is that traditional websites are essentially a program that always runs on a web server. Running sites this way needlessly slows things down and provides many points of attacks and is always expensive to scale. For example, if you want to scale your application, you will need to buy new resources like CPU and RAM and scale it vertically, which hits its limit very rapidly. So here is where JAMstack comes in. JAMstack stands for JavaScript, APIs, and markup. Now, it isn't limited just to JavaScript. It's just that there are multiple tools that use JavaScript as their build tool. So JavaScript is, of course, for rendering our web application. APIs are our source of services where we can get data and use it to build our app or add functionality. And markup is essentially the content that you display on your application, which will be used to render static pages and static content. Now, what Jamstack has to offer is multiple benefits. So the first thing is faster websites. By faster websites, we mean that our site will be optimized by pre-rendering the pages and delivering it via a global delivery network, like a CDN, for example. Why this improves performance? Because, like we said, if you use the legacy web, we need to have a server located somewhere where we fetch our HTML. Now, let's say, for example, your user is at the other end of the world. He will experience very long load time, and your application may be really unusable for him. So with CDN, for example, we can deliver content as close to as the users as possible. The second benefit is more secure infrastructure because Jamstack essentially uses architectures that are secure by default and that are maintained by big giants who take security very very seriously. And the third one is high scale without high complexity. When you use APIs like microservices for your APIs, you can scale each microservice independently and scale down and scale up easily. Uh, and it is cost friendly. The fourth one is improved developer experience because it enables developers to not concern themselves with the common problems that already have been solved, like for example authentication, web hosting, etc., and just focus on what they are best, which is business logic and our product, the product that they want to build. So how does Jamstack works? Well, you just build your site statically using a static site generator or for example PWA generators like Next, like Gatsby, like Next, view, and these will provide you with static content like HTML, JS, and assets, PNG, for example, which have a very high performance because they are optimized. And then you build them using remotely using a build system like netlify build, which uses continuous integration and continuous delivery. You build them on that build system, and it will be provided directly on the CDN. Next, once your front end is deployed on the CDN, you can use APIs. Use APIs via API calls directly from the front end without concerning yourself by building a backend. So APIs like, for example, authentication of Firebase, Firebase Firestore, etc. Yes. Next, how JAMstack advances the web. So the first one is running sites on web servers. We said previously that this approach is very bad these days because it gives performance bottlenecks. So we replace it with deploying to sites globally. So our sites won't be just hosted on one single server located somewhere, but deployed to a global CDN. The second one is we replace the web pages that are rendered at runtime or on request by web pages that are pre-rendered for speed. So we use tools like Webpack and the optimizers to optimize our page the maximum possible and deliver it directly, pre-rendered. And we won't re-render the page on each request. Third, we replace the architecture of monolithic applications by APIs and microservices. This allows us to decouple the front end from the back end and allows for more modular development and gives us the ability to take advantage of a huge ecosystem of third-party tools to add and remove website functionalities like authentication, like databases, like functions, etc. So how does JAMstack integrates with the modern workflow? JAMstack is not an opinionated stack like MERN or mean stack that restricts you to a certain technology, but in fact it just suggests some good practices, best practices. For example, it integrates well with Git workflows, where your development is tied with Git-based workflows like creating branches, pull requests, like so on. And for example, if you deploy your site to netlify, for example, each time you deploy to the master branch, your site will be rebuilt automatically and will be available for the users. The second one is modern tools. The JAMstack, there are a lot of modern tools that support JAMstack by default, like JavaScript frameworks like React Gatsby or Next for Vue. They enable to very advanced functionalities like linting code, transpiling TypeScript to JavaScript, and compiling CSS and optimizing assets. The last one is CDN technology, which was first used by big companies to reach more users rapidly. But now JAMstack democratizes this use of CDN technology and makes it available for everyone to deploy and deliver web content from endpoints as close as possible to the users, like this. Now, what is needed for a JAMstack to work with JAMstack? We need software and services, of course, like site generators, for example, PWA site generators like Gatsby JS and Next.js for React and Next.js for Vue to build our front end. Second, we have headless CMS to decouple content management from building the site and makes it available for non-developers to manage content easily. And this content will be consumed by the site using APIs. And second, we have infrastructure to deploy our site. The first one is CI/CD build, like for example, netlify build, which will handle building and delivering your content, and the global hosting like a CDN, netlify ADN, for example. So that's it for this small presentation. Now we go to a live coding session where we will see how to build a hybrid app using Gatsby, and we will deploy it to netlify. So first, to use Gatsby, we just need to install it, npm install Gatsby CLI. You install it with this command, and it will install globally on your machine. Next up, to create a new Gatsby site, you just run Gatsby new, and you give your Gatsby project name here, for example, project 1. And then you run it, and it will bootstrap boilerplate code here, like this. Make sure you are on a directory, on a good directory. Then it will bootstrap a project like the project structure like this. It will have a source file, and 4 files here, like Gatsby browser, Gatsby config, Gatsby node, and Gatsby SSR. And of course, all the packages needed will be in the package.json, like that. And so let's see what this source folder contains. It contains a folder components, where all your components of your site will be held, a pages component, and then images component. For the pages component here, it is very important because it will contain all our pages that we will pre-render for to deliver on the CDN. And yeah, so before we see this, let's see first what is the benefit of these 4 Gatsby files. The first one is Gatsby browser, where you can put any scripts, any browser script that you want to run when your site is first deployed. For example, you run a script only on the browser, and then we have Gatsby config, where we configure our Gatsby builder, for example, with site metadata. Here, this site metadata will be used to provide info for the search engine optimization, SEO. And then we have plugins here, and you can add the plugins as you want, because Gatsby has a great plugin system. For example, here you see that I added a plugin netlify CMS to enable CMS on this site. Yeah, so that's it. And then we have a Gatsby node. This Gatsby node contains hooks to the built-in life cycle of the site. For example, you can re-implement the method on create page to specify what you want to do when Gatsby creates your pages. And here we have a Gatsby SSR, where you can specify some server-side rendering stuff. You can find all of this on the documentation of Gatsby. So now we can go and see what is there in the pages folder. So if you can see here, we have some JS files and one JSX file here. So the first one, so as you can see, the pages, each element will be built into a route on our site. For example, our index.js will be the default route of our site. For example, page2.jsx will also be a route on our site. We can that we can access, and we will talk later about this app.js. And there is also a default not found JS path, which is for 404, which will be displayed whenever a user hits a route that doesn't exist on your site. So let's start with index.js. So as you can see in Gatsby, all the pages are just React components. Here we are importing React, and then here we import a link from Gatsby. This will help us navigate to pages without refreshing the page. without requesting another page, which is a single page application functionality. So as you can see here, we have a layout component. This layout component is just there to specify a common structure of our page. For example, the footer, the navigation, and this won't change between pages. Then we have an SAO component to specify some SAO data. And then we have our content of the page. For example, here we have a title, we have a paragraph, and we have an image. Then we have two links. I will run the page for you to see. So to launch this into development, we run Gatsby develop. We run Gatsby develop. It loads here. It loads the plugins. I hope that takes time. It loads our plugins, and then here it says it is running. Okay, so we go here, for example, we refresh this, we will have our page. This is the index page because it is the route by default, like this. So this is our hi people, and yeah, so this is the image. Now we have two links here, the post and the use app. So this is for the index page. I think it is easy to understand. Now let's go to the second page here and see. We go here. The second page, of course, is the same as the previous one. It just contains a layout and some content, some static content that will be pre-rendered at build time here. For example, this title and this stuff here will be pre-rendered for in the page. It won't be rendered at runtime on the client side. Now we said here in this small paragraph that we want some dynamic content here, which enables us the hybrid functionality. So we won't just stick with static stuff, but also use dynamic stuff. So I added here a component which is called posts, and we will check it now. We go here. So post is just a React component that is a simple React component that fetches data and renders stuff on the client side. So let's tackle this post. So the first thing you notice that we use state here. We have a load-in state here to indicate if the posts were loaded or not. We have also posts that will contain the data that we fetch, and displayed is just an attribute that we will use to restrict display of posts. Then we have a function here. This function takes a URL of any type of URL and fetches the data from it. It fetches the data, and once it gets the data, it sets the post to that data and sets the loading to false to tell Gatsby that tell the site that it finished fetching the data. Now, when is this method run? It is run when the component is mounted. For example, when posts is mounted into the DOM of the site, it will run this use effect method. It will fetch the data using this URL, which I got from JSON placeholder here. This JSON placeholder is just a mock API that lets you use some data without setting up your own server. Now, once the post component is mounted onto the DOM, it will run this method, and once it finished, it will set the loading to false. Meanwhile, because we want to display something before the data is fetched, we will return if it's loading. We will return a component which I called here post loader. Post loader is just you will see it. It's just a component that tells the user that something is loading, and then once it finished loading, it is set here to false. This condition will be false, so this part will be rendered. So I will show you. what it gives. What we will render is a list containing for each post. We render the post here. For example, we have a list item. Inside of it, there is a post. And then we have two buttons, the first one to refresh and the second one to show more posts. I will show you the page now. So when we go to posts, as you have seen, the loader, I will put here to true. I will keep it to true for you to see the this is the page loader. It will be displayed while the data is fetched from the API, and once it is fetched, it will be set to false. Now it will be, I will refresh, it will be set to false, and if we refresh, of course, it will run it again. Now for these two buttons, for example, we have refresh. It will, let me show you the code. Refresh here. It sets the loading to true again to put the loader, and it fetches the data again here. And for the show more, it checks if the displayed posts are less than the post length. If it's true, then it increments by 3 to add more 3. For example, here, if I click, it shows 3 more. If I click, it shows 3 more, etc. Like this. So this is for the posts component. So as you can see, this component is fully dynamic. It doesn't matter what API you put here. You can change it. You can change it to get that data from somewhere. Yeah, but it has to have the same format, of course. So that's for the posts. Now let's tackle the app route that we have talked about. Now you know that sites are not just just static sites that you display content in. Sometimes there are apps where there is a lot of interactivity, like of course private routes like profile route, login, etc. So we need this type of functionality in our site. You can build this using Gatsby, of course, by putting, for example, in the pages, we can put create a new file. We call it app.js, or for example, shop.js, or anything else. But unlike the statically rendered pages, an app doesn't use the normal router that comes with Gatsby that is used for static pages. Instead, it uses a router from Reach Router. This Reach Router is, of course, included with Gatsby. You don't have to install it if you have Gatsby, of course. And you will use it to create your client-side routes. Now, what do we mean by client-side routes? So client-side routes are routes that are specific to the user. For example, authentication. Once you authenticate, the application on the client side will generate the appropriate route of the user by fetching some data or something else. And these client-side routes won't be independent pages, but will be just components that are mounted to the DOM. So instead of having, for example, page2.html, index.html, you will just have app.html, and all the routes will be like integrated in it. It is like a single page application after all. So so as you can see here, we have a router which has the base path of /app, and it has two routes. The first one is a login, and the second one is a private route of profile. This private route of profile can't be accessed unless you are logged in the application. But before we can use this client-side routes, we need to tell Gatsby that this app.js is an app and has some client-side routes in it. How do we do that? We go into our Gatsby node, and we redefine the onCreate page. So this is the redefinition of onCreate page. It is an async function that takes the page and the actions performed on it. Then we take the create page action from the actions, and then we check if the page path matches this /app or /shop or anything like you want. Then we set the page dot match path equals to /app start to tell it that all the routes behind it are client-side routes. And then we create the page, of course, that is the app. Now, if we go back to our app here, we have an app layout instead of layout. For example, if you want our app layout to be different from our site layout, and we have the router and the path. The paths. I will show you here in the site. If we click here on the use app, it will take us to this login to app. So that's it, the login to app. If you click back here, it will take us to our site directly. And notice that there is no refreshing of the page. It is all a single page application, which is very fast and provides good user experience, like you can see. Now let's see this login page. What does it have? So if we go to here, we go to login. We see that login is just a React component, as we said. It has a state, which is credentials, which will contain the username entered by the user and his password. And it has a function to perform to tell it what to perform once we click on login, and a handle page, a handle change, which will change these values when the user types something. So here is the component. We have the form, we have the title, and we have the inputs like the username, the password, and the button. So on submit here, we call this method here, which is handle submit. So what does it do? It checks if it logs the user. It checks if this method login will return true if the user exists. So if it exists, it will return true, and it will let him to navigate to the profile. Else it will just tell him that the credentials are wrong. Now let's see this method login. So this method is just a simulation of for example, a service like Firebase auth or something that will let us authenticate users. So I created it using code, but you can use any service that you want here. So if we go see this method, what it is, so you can see it's auth.ts. We are exporting two methods. The first one is login, which take the username and the password, right? And here it sets the state to this values, and returned is login. This state is just a simulation of a database, for example, that contains some value. Then here in the function is logged in, it will check if the state.user equal admin and the password equal, for example, admin, it will return true, else it will return false. But in a real case, you won't use this. You will call an API to tell you if the user exists or not, and give you the appropriate profile with it. So that's it. Let's check here in the login. So if I go to the site, for example, and I say Janasim and provide some password that doesn't exist, it tells me wrong credentials. So it means that I'm not allowed to access this route. But if, for example, I say admin and enter, it will let me enter this profile. Okay. So let's see now, for example, if I try and access the profile route without logging in profile, it takes me directly to the login page, to the login route, because this profile is not a public route, it is a private route. How did we create this private route? It's using this private route component here. So let me show you first. We have a private route that has a path of /profile, and the component that it displays is profile, which we defined there. So if we go to the private route and see the code, it is a component, of course. It takes the component that to display and a series of properties. So it checks first if the user is logged in, which means the password and username are correct. It lets and the location is not login. If that's not correct, it will navigate to login. It won't let them access the profile component. Else, it will let them access the component with the appropriate profile. And if I check my profile component, it's again another simple component that can have also dynamic data using fetch or anything else, and it will display the appropriate profile. Here it is just a statically typed profile, but you can use fetch to get any kind of data and display it here from your APIs, of course. Now this is for the profile page. Let's check again. So if I click here admin, it let me enter the profile page. If I go back and go again, it lets me because it's the same instance. But if I refresh, it doesn't let me because it's not the same instance. Okay, so so that's it for the how to build dynamic apps with Gatsby. And now I will show you how to deploy them to a CDN like netlify. So first, yeah. So to deploy them to a CDN, we will use Git and GitHub to host our site. So first, I have created a Git repository for the project where now we are gonna push to it. So first we're gonna commit our changes. I will just use the okay. So I'm gonna git commit git add. I'm gonna git add all. So this okay. So this okay. So we have our stage changes here, as you can see. Now we can commit directly. Git commit .m initial commit. Okay, so all our commits were added. Now we need to push it to our repository. I'm gonna copy this line here. Gonna copy it to add the remote here. So my remote is added. Now I just need to push using git push.u origin master. Here. As you can see, it is pushing. If you check here, it's not pushed yet. Okay, now it should have been pushed. As you can see here, we have our site is pushed to GitHub. Now to deploy the site, there are two methods. Either you use this deploy.netlify by modifying the link of the repo. I will show you. You go here and you modify this link here in the netlify. You just put your repository site, your repository link, and then you deploy it, or you just go to your netlify, you create an account and something, and then you go here to new site from Git. You create it, you go to GitHub, for example, and then it will ask you for authorization and stuff, and then you just go there. It will give you all the repos that are available in your repository in your account. For example, I will search for this repo that we just pushed. It is called learn JAMstack. Okay, so I'm gonna click and then it detects automatically that it is a Gatsby site. So it's gonna suggest that you use Gatsby build, which is the command to build the site. Okay, so you just click deploy site, and then it tells you that the site deploy is in progress. So it is in queued here to be deployed. Now, in the meantime, I will show you what does Gatsby build do. When you run Gatsby build, it builds the site and then pre-renders the static sites, the static routes, I mean, like page2.jsx and stuff, and gives you the pre-rendered pages. For example, it is here and it's finished here. Now, if we go to public, we will find all our static stuff. For example, index.js, which will be the entry point, our icon, for example, and here we have the pages. Notice here that page 2 was rendered into page 2 index.html. So it has its own pre-rendered page. But, for example, app just has an index HTML, but doesn't have routes for example, for login or for profile. They are all client side and will be rendered on the client side, not on the build side. So this is it. Now let's check with it is enqueued. We can check here if you can see the build here. Go in. It takes a little bit of time for the first build. So let's save it. So I will show you how to serve your site locally. For example, once you run Gatsby build, you run Gatsby serve, and then here Gatsby will tell you that you can view your site at localhost 9000, for example. We go here and we reload it. We have our site. This is how netlify will render your app. Now, if we go back to post, we can see that it works perfectly. It has dynamic data. And if we go back and use the app, we can of course log in, admin, and it lets us log in. If we refresh and log in with bad credentials, it won't tell us login. Let us log in. So let's see. It told me finished build process. Well, I think that there is a problem with my build. So anyway, this is how you deploy to your site to netlify. Let me see. Error in comment build script returned non-zero code. I think there is a problem with building, but anyway, this is generally how you do stuff. I don't think there will be a problem with your case. So now let's say if I change something in my code or want to add new functionality, I just need to modify the code, commit it, and push. And once I merge it with the master, netlify will detect it automatically that I modified and will deploy the new version of the site. I will show you an example of a site built like this. It is GDG Algiers, GDG Algiers site. So the GDG Algiers site was built using JAMstack, and it contains mainly static routes, but we can enhance it with dynamic routes. And of course, why Gatsby is good, because it gives you plugin functionality, like for example the ability to add PWA to your site. For example, if I click here and I already installed it, if I click here, I can open the site directly on my desktop here and just navigate it using PWA. And the site can also be installed on any device or like a phone or tablet. For example, the fast and hack also is PWA, and you can access it here. So this site was deployed using JAMstack, and you can deploy many other good sites using it. So as for Netlify, you can find here that they provide many other functionalities like functions to build a backend directly in Netlify, identity for authentication, forms to handle form submissions, and large media to upload files to your site, for example. So I guess that's it. I guess that's it for our presentation. I thank you for your attendance here. I hope that something was clear for you. And if you have any questions, feel free to message me here at my email or directly in my site. And make sure you consider always JAMstack for building your web apps because I think it's the next trend in web development. Thank you. I think we can stop recording.